Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I got to give you another hug. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. My name is Jaimie, and I am an alcoholic. And I want to thank Mike for asking me to come out and participate in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is an honor and a privilege to even be in a meeting, let alone participate. And I didn't always feel that way, but happily tonight I feel that way. And the thing that amazes me the most always about meetings is the people that raise their hands for being new, the people that come and get chips, the people that take cakes. You know, I want to congratulate those folks that did that tonight, because I did not do that. I didn't want any part of AA. And you know, now I look at it and I think, what a blessing. It's such a blessing to be able to stand up here and say that I'm sober. You know, it's not what I wanted. It's never what I wanted to do or be. I love alcohol. I love drinking. I love alcohol so much that I don't even have a drug story. That, you know, I went, right before I got sober, maybe a year or two or some amount of time before I got sober, I was on a boat with a drug dealer. I was with my friend, and she was friends with this drug dealer, and apparently we were going to Catalina, and it was a yacht that held probably as many people that are, you know, like how many people are in this room. And I went on this boat in this, you know how they have those big tables, like in the back end of the boat where all the people can sit, and I don't know what they do, but it's a dining room or something, and it was huge. And I was watching all these people, and there was a pile, a big, like a cake-sized pile of cocaine. I had never even seen it on this table. And all these people were doing this cocaine, and I said to my friend, you know, that what, you know, like, what's up with that cocaine? And you know, she's like, you know, whew, and a straw, and everybody's like, you know, and you know, I was drinking, and she says, you know, come here and take, you know, you want? And I thought, well, I got a little closer to it, and you know, I'm so smart though. As I got closer to it, what I noticed is I was the only person drinking. And I thought, I am not going to do that, because it looks to me, that's the way I figured out cocaine works. If you do cocaine, you don't drink, you know, and I wanted no part of that. And all these people are doing this, and after a little while, I thought, you know, then they're in fights. These women are in fights over who's doing, you know, whatever, and people are, and they're trying to sell it, and all this commotion is going on, you know. I finally got, those little taxi boats that come by, I got on a taxi boat and left, and went to the bar on Avalon, you know, because I thought, you know, I wanted to drink. And when I was in that bar on Avalon, the two girls that got in this big hair-pulling fight over, I don't know what they were doing, but they came into the bar at one point. They came flying into the bar, and I was playing pool and doing what I do, and this girl ran up to me and handed me something and said, here, hold this. And I don't even know what it was, because as I took it, the door opened, and here came two cops. And I'm not stupid, you know. And I dropped whatever it was, and I thought, and they sat next to me, and I thought, I don't know what's going on. But the cops came and got them and took them away. And I thought, you know, there is no way. I wouldn't do drugs if my life depended on it, because you get in trouble, people aren't drinking, you know, you're hiding from cops, it's, you know, the hell with that, you know. I heard a guy from a podium one time too say that he took some kind of little blue pills, and one time I tried to take speed. I took 10 at once, and but within 5 minutes nothing was happening. So I thought, this crap doesn't work. And this guy said from the podium, I thought, no wonder. He said that he had taken some kind of blue pills, and within 20 minutes you felt better. And I thought, 20 minutes? In 20 minutes you can drink 9 kamikazes. 20 minutes is like forever. Why would you want to do something that took so long to work, And my marijuana story is the same. I took marijuana once. I got a sore throat. I laughed so much, I was spilling drinks. I thought, never again, never again. I will not do this stuff, because everything that I looked at in terms of drugs just interfered with drinking. Everything in my life interfered with drinking. And I was talking with Dennis and his friend in the kitchen, and it's the same thing. If people were trying to talk to me, I thought talking was interfering with my drinking, You have to talk fast because I got to go. You have to, whatever you want, do it and get going, because I'm really very busy, And my drinking story is like that. I'm local. Actually I was born in Chicago, but my parents came here when I was, my mother brought us here when I was 2 or 3 years old, and I'm the product of an affair. My father is an Irish Catholic with a wife and 4 children, and my mother is the 18-year-old babysitter, and I'm the second child of that affair. And so we landed in California, in the 50s, and the Catholics, we had to leave Chicago, and my mother came out here, and my mother is not an alcoholic, and I didn't understand that until I got sober. She is absolutely surrounded by alcoholics, and she's not one of us. But she came out here and tried to raise us and take care of us as best she could. And then my father showed up when he finally had to leave Chicago. He came out here when I was about 3 or so, and 6 months after he got here, his 2 oldest sons from the marriage, who are both alcoholics, came out and moved in with us. And so my life began with a tremendous amount of violence and sexual abuse. I was abused by those 2 brothers when they showed up, and I went out 3-story windows, and I have been burned. When my mother didn't know how to stop me from, or whatever they were fighting over, my parents, she turned the stove on and held my hand in it and burned me. And that was the way they disciplined us, is just beat the crap out of who's ever doing it. And so I grew up. I'll tell you, when I took my first drink, I heard Dennis talking about his first drink. That, I think, drinking saved my life. It was absolutely the one thing. I didn't care what you were doing anymore. Once I took a drink, I didn't care. I felt like, finally, I can stand it. Whatever I'm supposed to do, I can just now stand it. But all these people moved in. Originally it had been my mother and my brother and me, and my mother, we were kind of homeless. We lived on the streets, and my mother did what she could, to take care of us. And then when my father came and all these brothers came, we got a house in Inglewood, and that's where I lived. I grew up at 106th and Prairie Avenue. And my mother's solution to our reality was to send my brother and I to the Catholic school. She figured that my other brothers were in the public school at Morningside and Center Avenue, and my mother sent us up to St. Eugene's, which was like 3 miles from the house. So we, walked up there, or however we got there, from the time I was like 6 years old, and my brother and I, and I was raised by nuns, and I hate nuns. I hate these people, those people in these, black clothes, and I never saw a nun except their face and their hands, and I did not even know that they had bodies underneath those clothes when I got sober. One time, I was in 8th grade, when I was in 8th grade, and this nun, somebody wanted to see like how we were supposed to stand at the high school graduation like young women, and how to put your feet, and this nun lifted up her long black thing, and one of the girls in the class, it must have been not just me, it was all of us, one of them looked at her and went, "Sister, your legs." And Sister looked at us and said, "What do you think I had under there, a pair of stilts?" And I thought, "No, I thought you were stuffed." I thought that, You know when you lift up those porcelain dolls' clothes and they're just like stuffing, and all you see is face and hands. And I had no idea that nuns were people, but whoever they were a pain in my life, you know, because all the crap that was going on in my house, you know, I showed up dirty and unkempt and uncared for and wet and without papers and the wrong stuff and late and bruised and kind of a wreck, you know. And what the nuns would always do about it is call my mother. They were forever asking my mother what the problem was, and then when I get home I get the crap beat out of me for them finding out, you know. And when I was in 6th grade I got caught stealing. I stole everything. I cheated on every test I ever took. I stole everything. If I sat next to you tonight, which notice I'm alone, if I sat next to you I would have been in your purse or whatever was laying around and I would have taken it. You know, I used to go into bars and if you put your coat on the chair like I did, I went home with it. You know, I'm a taker. I take what I need. I grew up with nothing, and you had everything, so I just took what I wanted. And in 6th grade, you know, when I was 11 years old, I got caught for stealing and just damn near got killed for that. And, you know, but that's how my life was. And by the time I was 15, I was absolutely uncontrollable. Those nuns had no clue what to do with me. My mother moved us here. She figured it was Englewood, you know, so we had gotten rid of my brothers, you know, when I was about 8 years old or something. They were gone, and I have 3 younger brothers and sisters. They moved in, and my mother moved retarded people in with us because my father couldn't keep a job, so she was like foster mother to, you know, these retarded kids for money, and my dad was molesting one of them. And I mean, these people were just in our house, you know. When I got sober, you know what AA gave me? A set of facts. You know, I did not know, if you asked me how many brothers and sisters I had, it could have been any number. It could have been 5, 7, 9, 11, you know, because it was depending on who I was counting at the time. I did not know who these people were. But when I was 15, my mother had moved us over here to Westchester. I grew up right at the end of Liberator out there, and my mom sent me to St. Bernard's. My brother went on to Sarah High School, and my mother sent me here, and she really had great faith in these nuns, you know. She just thought they knew it all, and I hated them. And when I got to St. Bernard, Sister Mary Ann was the principal over there, and that woman was man, I was like toe-to-toe with her in her office and in so much trouble, and she was always calling my mother. And she finally called my mother one too many times and just said, you know, we cannot control this child. You do what you need to do with her. But she threw me out of high school. And in 10th grade, that was the end of my education. I never went back to school. I did not know how to do anything. And because of the way I went to school, I could barely read and write. When I got sober, I could not multiply by 0. I didn't even know how to do that. I've been such a liar. You know how I got jobs is by sleeping with whoever. I feel like, especially since most of you are local, I want to say to you, if I ever slept with you, I'm sorry. You know. If you're anybody's wife, I'm really sorry, you know. But too bad. I had a good time, you know. I love bars, I love men, I love the darkness, I love the drinking, you know, and if I have to go out and screw in the parking lot for 10 minutes to get a drink, no problem. That's the way I did it. But so I sort of was the same way when I was in high school. The same kind of deal was going on, and when she threw me out of school, right about a month after that, it was right around St. Patrick's Day, I got gang raped by 7 boys from school, and I'll tell you, that was when I developed an attitude. By then, I had had enough of everybody and everything. I was sick to death of being beat on and being raped and molested and whatever was going on. I was just sick of it. And that's my first drink came at this point. And I'll tell you, I think it's what saved my life. You know, thank God alcohol was created for me, because that December, you remember where J.J. Newberry's was over there? I worked there, and I stole everything out of that place. But the 4 months or so I worked there, at Christmas time in December, the guy that was my boss, I was 16 by now, he said that there was a little party or something going on downstairs, and that I was the underage person on Friday night in the store, but it was Christmas, and I could just go down to that punch bowl, and here's a little Dixie cup, get a little drink, and come right back come back to work at this cash register. Well, I went down there, and in 20 minutes, I had cleaned the punch bowl out, you know, and That was my first drink, that punch bowl, and it was champagne and sherbet, you know. I hate all of that. I've never eaten sherbet since, and I never drank champagne unless I got forced into it, you know, after that. I just hate that stuff, but that's how I drank. My first drink was that punch bowl. My last drink was 9 kamikazes in 20 minutes, you know, and then I know beer is obviously not drinking, you know, beer is, I don't know, water sort of, and, you know, so that's the way I drank, though. In between, you know, that first drink and last drink, the only thing that happened is 19 years went by. You know, nothing, that was it. Every ounce I ever drank was the same, but after my first drink, and I wasn't going to school, and I couldn't keep a job, you know, I couldn't do anything. Well, I was hanging out with this guy, and I got pregnant, and I have 2 children. My children are 26 and 24 years old. And, you know, I didn't try to be married when you're me. You know, my family thought, well, I should, you know, get married, I guess. It seems to, like, what else am I supposed to do? So I married this guy, and I think he's local. He's from Westchester. He was the tennis star at Westchester High School. You know, I was the kicked out of St. Bernard's, and, you know, I'm hanging around with this guy, and we're pregnant, and, you know, so I tried to be married. I tried. I did absolutely the best I could do. For 8 years, I tried to be married to this guy, and I hated him, and I hated marriage, and I don't vacuum today, you know. I did not know how to do dishes. I didn't know you were supposed to change sheets on beds. I just didn't know who was doing anything. You know, when I grew up, I did stuff because I was being beaten up. Nobody was beating me, and I didn't know who was supposed to do it. As far as I could tell, me and those 2 kids didn't have any parents, and we didn't need any, and nobody could make me do anything. And this guy, you know, he worked for Edison. He was a good guy. He tried. He went to school. He was just, you know, I hated him. I couldn't live in that household and be there, and so when I was 25, I had enough of it, and I took the kids the way I always did. I put them in the car in the morning, and I drove away, and we moved. You know, we were not married anymore, and we moved. And that's the way I did that. And then about a year and a half or so after I left, it turns out in a blackout, I'm a fabulous blackout drinker, which is why I have to make public amends. You know, because I woke up one day and, well, actually I came to out of a blackout sitting near some mountain full of snow in some cabin. It turned out it was Lake Tahoe, and I was on my honeymoon. And I thought, oh man, not this, you know, I am not going to be married, I'm sorry. This guy on top of it, I thought, you know, men are such liars. They will tell you anything to get, you know. This guy he was 20 years older than me and had a wife and 4 children, you know, and he's telling me that I'm married to him and I have 2 young children, and I thought, you know, this cannot be true. I've already heard this story. This is not true. And I called, my oldest daughter is not an alcoholic, so I called her up, and she always knew. I didn't know until I got sober that she was paying the rent and doing the bills and grocery shopping and really trying to manage me, and, you know, so I called her to see what happened, because I thought, this guy's a liar. I'm not married. I know I left him. I haven't been married in like 5 years, you know. So I called home, and Julie said, oh no, Mommy, we had a wedding here Saturday. You wore white. And it was Tuesday already, you know, and I thought, oh God, you know, I don't want to be married. I hate people. I hate this whole thing. But I thought, well, you know, give it my best shot, and I had bought a race car and was dragging that around, and, you know, a horse, and I thought, well, what's the difference? I'll try this. And, you know, it turns out that I had bought the house we're living in, and I was married for about 10 months to this guy, and you know what happened, though, is I guess I liked him because he drank like me. And he lost his job stealing or something like that, or drinking on the job. Something went wrong. I was the worker. So I'm going to work. This is what I figured out. I'm working and having to buy all of the alcohol, and I don't get to drink all day, and he does. Who needs him? You know, I didn't need him, and so what I did is what I always did. I took the kids to the Reno airport and got on a plane and flew to LA, and my sister is sober in AA too, but I called my sister and said, I'm here. And she came and picked me up, and my ex-husband had my kids, and I took the summer off, and I called the guy and said, if you want the car, it's in the Reno airport. I moved. And I've never seen him since. You know, that was the end of that marriage, and I had to go to Sacramento about a year after and explain to some judge why I abandoned a house. I told the judge I didn't even know I owned a house, and, you know, but who cares about all that, So I came back here, and I thought, well, I'll try. What is going on in the world? I'm 30 years old. Maybe, I don't know, like, I need a job and a place to live and quit getting married, and I'm going to make sure I don't marry anybody else, and, that's the deal. What's up? How do you do this? So I thought, well, my older brother is same life as I had, and he's not an alcoholic. He's an attorney. And he went to Loyola, and he went to Loyola Law School, and I thought, that's it. I need a degree. If I had a degree, I could get a job, and I could, all right, so I gave myself a degree in accounting from UCLA. I hadn't even graduated high school. I had no idea where UCLA even was, but I had heard about it, and I gave myself an accounting degree, and it worked. I got a job, and we got an apartment right out here on Manchester, and the kids and I settled down to just live. Finally, I figured out I did have to sleep with my boss to get that job, but you know what, at least, so what, I had a degree now, and when I got here too, I thought, if I would have stayed drinking about 6 more months, I would have had a PhD. The hell with graduate school, I was finally starting to figure out how life worked, and but I was here, and it was awful, and I did the same thing my mother did. I sent my children to Catholic school. They went to St. Anastasia's, and then my oldest daughter, got herself into Notre Dame, and I thought, I hate these nuns. Why does my older daughter, she could go to Westchester or somewhere. No, she goes to Notre Dame. Just, I thought she did it deliberately, because then I'd have to go over there, and I'm in front of the nuns again, There was a podium over at Notre Dame. It's actually a counter, and it's about this high, and I went in with the kids one day. The nun called us in, Sister Gina Marie, and Julie told me I had to go over there, and so Julie is 5'4" and long dark hair, like this hippie physics. She's a physics major, my daughter is, and she's here, and Jennifer, the love of my life, my other daughter, is 6 feet tall. She's blonde hair, green-eyed. At the time, she was a death rocker, which means her sides of her head was shaved, and her big gigantic mohawk was bleached white, and she had white shoe polish and black crap on her face, and she only wore black clothes and combat boots and black lipstick. And I'll tell you, when I saw Jennifer, I thought, she just looked how I felt. She just, when I was with Jen, and we'd walk, people walked around us, and that was fine with me. Julie was way too friendly and talked way too much, and she wanted birthday parties. It was just, Julie drove me crazy. And we're in front of this nun, here we are, and I always had a bottle in my pocket, and especially in front of nuns, and I'm standing, and, I don't even know what the hell we're doing in the school, and this, I don't even know what this nun is saying to me, but pretty soon Julie is saying, "Mommy," and this nun says to me, "Are you the mother?" And I said, "No," I thought, no, let me explain to you something. Me and these kids, we don't have any parents. We got rid of the parents. We don't have any, we don't want any, we don't need any, and you can't make us get any. And this nun, I think, sometimes I used to think they graduated Julie just because they felt sorry for her, but she's a genius kid. But that's how it was, I tried. That was the best I could do. It's all I could do. And now I look back and I think, I wrecked my kids' life. I wrecked their life, All they ever wanted to do was just be little kids, and I hauled them all over, and they had to live my lifestyle. That's all I could do. And Jennifer is... She is an alcoholic, too. My youngest daughter is an alcoholic, and I'm happy to tell you, though, she's 8.5 years sober. She's 24 years old, and she's 8.5 years sober. And, she got married 2 years ago, and my son-in-law is 5.5 years sober. And I think, isn't that amazing? Jennifer got sober at 15. Jennifer got sober 3 days after I turned 2 years sober. And, she got sober because I almost killed her. Because when I was 2 years sober, that's why I'm so happy to see the cakes. Because I could not do AA. My sister got sober before me, and I was the designated driver. She lost her license, and I had mine. So I was coming to meetings driving my sister to AA because she can't drive to AA because she has no license. So I'm the designated drinking driver to AA, And I'm driving my sister up here for 2 years. I drank in your midst for 2 years, and I just hated every single one of you because you all had something I didn't have. I didn't know what it was, but I knew you all had it. And so after a couple years of that, and when I turned 2 years sober, which was like 4 years after I was introduced to AA, my daughter came in this one night, and she was a wreck. You know, her clothes were torn, and her thing on her head had fallen over, and that crap was all over her face. And you know, the way I am, I looked at her and I thought, you know, they raped her. That's what happened. This is a gang rape. And I knew it, and I was so angry. I told Jen to go get in bed and not to worry about it. And you know, I had never raised my hand in 2 years. I thought, I'll be damned if I raise my hand. Because you know what that means? If you raise your hand, that means you're not drinking. That means you're living a sober life. And I could not afford to raise my hand because I needed a damn drink. I just didn't know quite when. And I was like Dennis too. I had been sent to a therapist by this job that I had. I don't know, they thought I was nuts with this degree. And, you know, so I was going to therapy, and I'm, you know, I could not raise my hand. And this night when Jen came in, I thought, thank Christ I had not had a drink, you know, raise my hand at all, because I needed a drink and I needed a gun. You know, it was over with. I have never in my life been a second suicidal. You know, clearly I'm homicidal. Clearly it's your fault and I know who you are. You know, just give me a minute and I'll take care of it. And I told Jennifer to go get in bed. You know, she was 15 years old. I said, go get in bed and don't worry, I'm here. And I was heading down the hallway. I was going out to get a drink and a gun, and I thought, I'm going to start taking people out. I'm going to start with my brothers and then my dad, and I'm going to go right down the line, then you're next. You know, anybody that ever talked to me my whole life, those nuns, everybody. I was going to fix my problem once and for all. And the first prayer of my life, I'm Catholic, I was raised Catholic, I spent my life with the nuns, I had never told the truth in confession, and the first prayer of my life came as I headed down that hallway. And I said, you know, God, I know I'm screwed. I know for me it's hopeless and useless. Don't even worry about me anymore. But please don't let her die. Jennifer was so loaded and she had been busted in 8th grade for possession. You know, she was a wreck. This kid had been using since she was 8 years old. You know, she was a wreck, and she was going to die, and I knew it. And I prayed for her. And you know, I didn't go out that door. And I stopped and I called that big giant billboard on Arbavita over there that says, need help? Call 677-HELP. And I thought Jennifer needed help. So I called it. It turned out to be Sentinella Hospital in an adolescent alcoholic rehab. And I brought Jen there, and they kept her for 90 days. They took her away from me is what they did. They told me I was awful and that I was a jerk and that Jennifer under my influence didn't stand a chance. You know, and I had to go there every Wednesday night and listen to their crap now. And I had that therapist, you know, I was his first patient. You know, he was like 26 years old, and he didn't know what to do with me, so he sent me to incest therapy, and he's sending me to AA, and now I've got to go to the hospital and fight with these people over who's the parents. And my ex-husband came back into the picture because he was mad at me for this kid, you know, and the shape she was in, and it was terrible. You know, it was just terrible. The year that I turned 3 was the worst year of my life. I still was not raising my hand. I did not have a sponsor. I was coming to AA, but that's the best I could do at that time. And the kids wanted me thrown out of the meetings up there. They thought I was a pain in the neck. And when I turned 3, I finally raised my hand a week before I turned 3, and the kids gave me my first cake. And I couldn't believe it. You know, in my entire life, I've never had a birthday cake until I got to AA. And those kids gave me that cake. And, you know, I was finally starting to surrender. And I had been around 5 years by now. And, you know, I took that cake, and I was really happy about it. And I tried they told me to take Jennifer to a meeting once a week. That they gave her back to me. They had taken her away, and they gave her back, and I got an apartment in West Hollywood. I had to, a guy I was hanging with had bought me a house, and I had to give that back and give back the car and, you know, go try to do this on my own. And so I moved to West Hollywood, and Jennifer was with me, and they told us to go to a meeting once a week together. That was my commitment with her. And so we went to the log cabin every Sunday morning, and it turned out the meeting we picked out it's about this big. It was all gay men. And I didn't even know that. You know, I didn't know. I just thought it was men, and they let us come, and I didn't ask questions because I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't want to be told to go away. And it was funny, though, after about 8 months of being there, Jen and I got to take a cake. I took one for 4, and she took one for 1. And I didn't know these guys thought that Jennifer and I were dating. They didn't know. My hair was waist long, and I was like this hippie goof, and here's Jennifer with her stuff, and they thought we were some kind of, I don't know what. And then when Jennifer took her cake first, and she said, "My mommy," and there was like an audible gasp in the room, And they thought that's what she just called me, And so then I got up and took my cake and said, "My daughter," and they couldn't believe it. And I thought, what the hell is the matter with you people? And I didn't even get it. But that was my introduction. By the time I was 4, I had gotten a sponsor, and which was really difficult for me. They said, "Get a woman," and I thought, I hate women. I hate women. I hate women because they are the jerks that hang out with men, and I just hate men. But my therapist said, get a woman that looks like she got dressed on purpose. And I thought, what the hell does that mean, and because I only owned shorts, and my hair was waist long, and so I thought, what does that mean? And he said, look and see if her hair is brushed. Does she have, clean clothes on? Or do her shoes match? Does it look like she got dressed on purpose? And I thought, oh God, where am I going to find one of those? But I found this woman at Friday morning in the log cabin in West Hollywood. I thought, I need somebody I can relate to, not that goddamn Pacific group where my sister was. And, so I picked this woman out, and it turns out she was a 12-year member of the Pacific group. And, from Friday till Monday night, I was in the Pacific group. And, I had been avoiding that mess for 5 years. And when I went up to the Pacific group, they gave me the commitment at that meeting on Monday night to be the literature. And the term was ending just like here. And a few months later, I became the greeter, which was awful for me because in the Pacific group, if you're a greeter, you have to wear a dress. I didn't own a dress. I didn't even know how to buy a dress. I didn't even know anything. I didn't even know like what size nylons were, And now I still think that I don't know who invented that crap, but they should just like tell you what size they are. But they, if you turn the package over, there's like this grid. You have to know how tall you are, how much you weigh, how your hips are, and you have to fit yourself in, and then you have to see are you a C or a CD or and I would get these things on, and I'd be standing at the door, and they would be like up to my neck or down. There would be runs in them, I had no clue what was going on, and, the women, too, the women would tell me, I get a run in them. I don't think I have ever owned a pair of nylons. I think they come with runs. I don't believe they don't come without them. But I had these on, and they had an enormous tear in them. And I had heard somewhere in a stag or somewhere that, some woman saying, well, if you put a little nail polish on it, it'll go away. That is not true. I pasted a bottle of nail polish on my... I couldn't believe it. I was so overwhelmed by this. I had no idea, and now I picked out, I decided what size I wear, and that's it. I'm not, I hate this stuff. And, but that was my introduction, and the following year they elected me secretary of the meeting, and I spent another year in a dress. And my daughter that's sober, one of the amends I've made to her is after she, graduated high school and she took her test and passed and all that, but she became a hairdresser. So the year she spent in hairdressing school, I'll tell you, was my living amends. My hair, I had never cut it, and it was at my waist, and Jennifer learned how to do spiral perms on me. She learned how to color on me. She learned how to haircut on me. I was her model the day she took the test. And my hair, the longer that she has been sober, the shorter my hair has gotten, Last winter, she's really good at it now, but last winter she was practicing with some new color on me, and I came out with like red and white polka dots, and Jennifer was horrified. She's going, oh my God, Mommy, I'm so sorry, I'll put bleach packets in. I thought, whatever, it's an amends for me to, be there for her, and I've done that, and I'm happy about it, and I went back, I finally got to my inventory, and I made a decision in my life that I don't know what the hell happened to me, but I made this decision to get a new sponsor because I thought, I really need to deal with God. And my sponsor today is an Irish Catholic nun. And I think, how did that happen? I hate nuns, But I have this woman, and she's helped me. She sent me to a priest, you know, to clean up my problems with the Catholic Church and all the many affairs I had and the 7 abortions. You know, that was my form of birth control. And, you know, so I did that. And she sent me back to St. Bernard's, back to the high school to make amends to those people. And I took the proficiency exam over, you know, after a time. And, you know, what was really funny is the nun that was the principal, she was only principal 4 years, the same 4 years I should have been there. You know how they move priests and nuns every couple years? Sister Mary Ann, 30 years. She's my next door neighbor. She hasn't budged an inch. And I go back to this school to make amends, and I have to make them to the nun that threw me out. You know, I think, God, you could give me a break once in a while, you know. And I thought, oh, well, the hell with it. She's probably 90, you know. She won't remember me. She remembered me, you know. She didn't know why, so I thought, I'll tell you, you bitch. I'll tell you why, you know. No. God knows I wanted to, but I didn't. You know, I told her that she was an excellent nun and had, you know, she had done the best she could, and, you know, and after that, though, I had taken the test, and I had been directed to start school at Santa Monica City, which I did, and, you know, I didn't know how to multiply or do anything, so I needed to go to Santa Monica just to learn some basic skills. I have been unemployable the whole time. I don't even know how to do anything, and so I did that, and after I was there a couple of years, you know, and they had been teaching me things, I needed to go on, and they said, you know, the next step is, I didn't even know what happened next, and it turns out after a 2-year junior college, you go to a 4-year university. So I applied to Loyola in a Catholic school, and I got accepted, and so I go to Loyola now. And I went up there, though, and what they said is my grades were fine, but they needed a character reference to go to that school, and I thought, where on the planet am I going to get a character reference, you know? You know, it's really funny, the nun, Sister Mary Ann, wrote it for me. You know, she wrote it, and she also knew that I needed my diploma, and since I had passed the test, she allowed me to graduate, and I got a diploma. I graduated high school in 1992. And you know what she did for me that was like such a complete blessing? She put the proper year on it. So it says 1969, the year I should have graduated, you know. So when I turned up at Loyola, I turned up with the character reference and with my diploma and my grades and all of that. And in my inventory, though, I had written that, you know, I wanted to be a doctor. And so I applied to the science department up there, and that's when I met Dennis up there. And I spent a year in doing science, and after I was there, I could not do chemistry. You know, that little kid I was with that was in my partner, I am completely blind on my right side, so I have no depth perception. I cannot measure in little graduated cylinders. I don't see the fire when it's on. You know, I'd turn the gas on in the matches, and this kid would be grabbing crap, you know, and I thought, they said, you know, we don't think this is working. Maybe you should try a different department, you know, a different degree, and that was last December, and I thought, the hell with them, I'll quit before, you know, they can't tell me this. Don't they know who I am, you know? And I called my nun up, and, you know, she's no help, and I called her and told her what was going on, and that I thought, the hell with this, I'm not going to go. Screw it, I can't do it. And she told me that I was so arrogant that why didn't I just listen to them, that they were the experts. And I said, you know, but you don't understand. You don't know what department they want me to go into. And she said, what is it? And I said, theology. They want me to go into the theology department, you know. And finally, you know, it was either get rid of her and quit AA or go into the theology department. So I am in the theology department. I'm going to graduate Loyola in May as a theologian. Now, how does this work, you know? I don't know. So this semester in all my classes, I have 5 priests for teachers. You know, I cannot swear, I cannot act wrong. They think, you know, I'm doing a good job. I'm making the grades, it's working, so I think, why do I fight about it all so much? And So what I'm waiting to do, I just got a TB test, and that I don't have TB, and then I had to be fingerprinted, and I thought, oh, great, the Department of Justice. I probably in a blackout, I probably did run over somebody or rob a bank or who knows, and my fingerprints are up in Sacramento right now, and I'm waiting for them to come back, and because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a teaching assistant at St. Bernard's, the high school that threw me out. I ought to be over there in whenever my fingerprints come back. And I think, can you believe this? Can you believe you can come to AA drinking, know absolutely nothing, and turn out to be a teacher of religion at the high school that threw you out? I don't get it. I don't get it. But, I'm not arguing that much anymore, and I'm going to go, and I'm looking forward to it. And I go to the yard every Saturday, and I play volleyball over there, and I think they're going to let me help coach the volleyball team at St. Bernard's, too. And I think, isn't that amazing? And about 2 weeks ago, one of the priests suggested that I return to school next fall and get a master's in theology. And I think somebody is out of their mind, I don't know if it's me or them, but, and I think I'm going to do that, and I can't believe it. And Jack brought me here tonight, and he went home, he dropped me off, and, he's in Al-Anon, and I've been with this guy 8 years, and I have been clean with him in thought, word, and deed. I owe no amends to him over anything. I just try with him, and I've never done that. And on top of that, he's not even a Catholic, he's a Jew, and I think, I don't understand that. I don't understand anything that's going on at all, except that I live alcohol-free, I live secret-free, I live lie-free. My children are all fine. My children, because of you, are all fine. My oldest daughter is a physics major out at Long Beach State, and, she said that she hated me and she hated AA worse when I came here. And now when I turned 10 in the springtime, she said that she loved AA because you know what AA had done for her? It had given her a mother. And I think, is that a miracle or what? That my children have a mother. And it turns out it's me, And my mother finally got tired of my father, and she threw him out of the house the day the riots started. And she went to a judge and got him moved from the house like 3 years ago. And I moved her into my apartment building, and I've become a good daughter to that woman. I've never understood what she had to put up with in me. And last September, when I was fighting over this whole chemistry and science thing, I thought, I'm going to end up drinking. I'm never going to turn 10. This isn't going to work, because the one amends that I would not do was to my mother. I thought, this is her fault that my life is screwed up. She should have stayed away from my father, 40 years ago, not 3 years ago. But I finally made the amends one morning. I wrote her a little note, and all I wrote on it is, Dear Mom, I'm so very proud of you. Thank you for being my mother, and thank you for keeping me. And I gave it to her, and my mother called about 4 days after she got it and said that she wanted to have a celebration. And I said, what for? And she said, I've been waiting 10 years to get this card. And I thought, oh my God, and I went to breakfast with her, and I couldn't believe it. I've become a good daughter to her, and I've become a good sister, and I have done nothing except fight my way through AA, and I feel like that at times. I think we're all walking around with a bag over our head, boxing with the world, and it's like all you got to do is take the bag off. There's nothing going on inside of that bag. And that's all that's happened to me in my life, is that I've come here, I've stopped drinking, and I've allowed people to boss me around and tell me what I need to do, because in and of myself, I don't have a clue. And I think it's the most amazing thing to me is Alcoholics Anonymous, that we are the liars, cheats, and thieves of the world. Yet we are the best people. We are the greatest believers in God. When I was in San Diego at the convention, the chef came out of the hotel I was staying in, and he told me that with 80,000 of us down there, that he could not believe, the city could not believe how wonderful we were as a group of people. That we tipped better, we were more polite, we were more kind than the Mormons that had been there the month before, I thought, we are a fabulous group of people. We are clearly, if I believe in anything I'm being taught in school, we are the chosen people. And I want to thank you for choosing me and keeping me.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control is connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.